Imagine two men, deep inside a flooded cave, with only enough breathing gas left for one of them to get out, not enough for both. 1. They are more than half a kilometer from daylight in water they cannot surface out of, and the line that was supposed to guide them home is gone. They have minutes to decide who swims, and who stays behind in the dark to wait for a rescue that may never come. This is the story of the man who stayed. He was down there for 60 hours beneath the island of Majorca. And what kept him alive was not strength, and it was not luck. It was the fact that he understood, better than almost anyone alive, exactly where he was. The place is Cova de Sa Piqueta, on the east coast of Majorca, near a cove called Cala Romantica. It is part of a vast drowned labyrinth in the limestone, a system of flooded galleries running for thousands of meters beneath the island. Caves like this form over hundreds of thousands of years, as rainwater seeps down through the rock and dissolves it, grain by grain, into a maze of submerged corridors. To the divers who explore them, they are some of the most beautiful places on the planet. But beauty and lethality are the same coin down there. Every meter of that beauty is a meter you have to swim back out through, on a finite supply of gas, with no surface to escape to and a ceiling of solid rock over your head the entire way. On Saturday the 15th of April, 2017, two men went in. Francesc Gracia, known to everyone as Zisco, was 54 years old, a geologist, and one of the people who had actually mapped these passages. He knew this system as well as any human being alive, because he was the man who had surveyed it. With him was Guillem Mascaro. This was not a tourist's reckless stunt. It was science. They were doing survey work, the patient business of measuring and documenting a cave that Gracia had spent years of his life charting. And then the cave took away the one thing they were counting on. In a narrow section, the two men came together and stirred the sediment, and the water went out. Not dim, out. Cave divers call this a silt-out, and it turns a clear gallery into a wall of brown nothing in a matter of seconds. And when they went to follow their guideline back toward the exit, the line was not there. It had broken, or been buried under fallen rock. In more than 20 years of diving, Gracia had never once seen a line break. Now he was searching for it, blind, deep inside a flooded cave, and every minute he searched, he was breathing. Understand what a guideline is, because this is the whole story. It is a thin cord run from the entrance into the cave, and it is not a convenience, it is the only thing that tells you which way is out. In zero visibility, hundreds of meters inside a cave, a human being has no other way of knowing. There is no up. Lose the line in a silt-out, and you are not lost the way you get lost in a city. You are lost inside a sealed rock maze, on a countdown, with the clock running on the air in your tanks. They made their way to a place Gracia knew existed, because other divers had described it to him, a chamber inside the system where the ceiling rises above the waterline, and a great volume of air sits trapped against the rock. Not a pocket, a hall, roughly 100 meters long and 40 or 50 wide, with black lakes lying still around its edges. They surfaced into it together. And there, standing on rock, inside a mountain, they checked what they had left to breathe, and they did the arithmetic that no diver ever wants to do. There was enough gas for one man to make the swim out. There was not enough for two. So they talked about it, and this is the part of the story I cannot stop thinking about, because there was no panic in it and no heroic speech. It was a calculation, made by two professionals, standing in the dark. Guillem was the thinner of the two, and he consumed less air, which gave him the better chance of covering the distance on what was left. Gracia had far more experience breathing the foul carbon dioxide-loaded air that collects in chambers like this. One, which made him the one better equipped to sit in it. The logic pointed one way. Guillem would take the remaining gas and go. Zisco would stay. Think about what each man was accepting. Guillem was accepting a long swim out, alone, through the same passages that had just swallowed their line on a supply of gas with no margin in it. And Zisco was accepting something arguably worse. He was staying behind, voluntarily, in a chamber that no rescuer could walk to find out by waiting whether his friend had lived. Because if Guillem did not make it, nobody on the surface would ever know where Zisco was. Nobody would be coming. He would simply be a man who never came home. Guillem swam, and the silence closed in behind him. Now begins the wait, and I want to be precise about what was actually trying to kill him, because it is not what most people assume. He was not slowly running out of oxygen. The chamber was enormous. What was rising hour by hour was carbon dioxide, the gas he exhaled, with nowhere to go, in air that could not refresh itself. It climbed to around 5%. Normal air is 0.04%. He was breathing air with more than 100 times the carbon dioxide a human body is built for. And the effect is a headache that never stops, a body that will not let you sleep, and a brain that gets steadily less reliable, in a place where being reliable is the only thing keeping you alive. The cold was the second executioner, and the more patient one. The water and the rock sat at a temperature that pulls heat out of a human body, without ever seeming dramatic about it. Not cold enough to kill you in minutes, more than cold enough to kill you over days. He had no way to get dry, no way to get warm. Hypothermia does not need you to make a mistake. It only needs time, and time was the one thing he had in abundance. So he went to work on the problem, and the way he did it is the reason this story is still taught. He found a flat rock above the waterline and he stayed on it, because moving costs heat and burns gas. He had 3 torches, and he rationed them the way a man rations water in a desert, sitting in total darkness, lighting one only when he had to move. He was thirsty, and he solved that too, because he was a geologist, and he knew something about this cave that no tourist would ever know. In a coastal limestone system like this, fresh rainwater floats in a thin layer on top of the heavier salt water underneath. So he drank from the very top of the lake. He had no food. He did not sleep. And after enough hours in that darkness, his mind began handing him things that were not there. Lights in the black, the sound of a diver's bubbles rising, rescuers who did not exist. And still, the thing that tormented him most was not the cold, and it was not the air, it was the not knowing. He said afterwards that he came to believe Guillaume had not made it out. That was the conclusion he reached, sitting on that rock, running the odds in the dark, and if Guillaume had not made it, then no one alive knew where he was. The search would be looking in the wrong place, or not looking at all. He put it very simply, later, in the end, I thought they would not find me. But Guillaume had made it. He had swum out of that cave alone, and he had raised the alarm. And by the time Zisco was sitting in the dark convincing himself that nobody was coming, roughly 60 people were on the surface above him, trying to work out how to get him back. That is the cruelty of this situation, and also its strange mercy. The rescue he had given up on was already underway, and he had no way to know it. But wanting to reach him and being able to reach him are very different things. On the Sunday, the dives were called off. The sediment the accident had thrown into the water was still hanging there, and the visibility was gone. One diver described it as trying to swim through a bowl of cocoa, so they tried something else. They brought in drilling equipment and attempted to bore down through some 30 meters of limestone from the surface, to punch a hole into his chamber from above. It failed. The rock won. And underneath all of it, a man sat on a stone in the dark, doing his breathing, watching his hallucinations, and slowly making his peace with dying there. It was Monday evening after more than 2 days, when the water finally cleared enough to try, and the man who swam into that chamber and surfaced in front of him was Bernat Clamore, not a stranger. Not a foreign specialist flown in for the occasion. Bernat Clamore was Zisco's own diving partner of many years, a man whose name sits beside Esco's on the scientific papers they had written together about this exact cave system. Behind him came another cave diver from the same club, Freddy Fernandez. The men who came for him were his friends, and the reason they could find him at all is that they had helped map the place he was lost in. They brought food, and sugar, and something to drink, and gas. And then, because you cannot simply extract an exhausted, freezing carbon dioxide poisoned man from 900 meters inside a flooded cave, the moment you find him, they went back out for the rest of the team. And he waited again. And then he swam. This is the part people tend to get wrong when they imagine the ending. He was not carried out unconscious. He was not dragged. Zisco Gracia dived out of that cave under his own power, breathing gas the rescuers had brought in for him, with his friends and the Guardia Civil's dive specialists around him, back through the same drowned passages that had nearly finished him. The swim took roughly an hour and a half, and at about 11 o'clock at night, on Monday the 17th of April, 60 hours after he had gone in, he walked out of that cave on his own, 2 feet. His core temperature was 32 degrees. He made a full recovery, and he still cave dives today. And waiting for him at the surface was Guillaume. I want to be careful about what the lesson here actually is, because it is not simply that he was tough plenty of tough people die in caves. What saved Zisco Grazia is that he understood, with real precision, the environment that was trying to kill him. He knew the chamber was there, because he had studied this system. He knew he could tolerate high carbon dioxide because he had breathed it before. He knew fresh water would float on salt because he was a geologist, and that is what limestone and rainwater in the sea do. Every one of those is knowledge, not courage. When the worst happened, his expertise did not make him brave. It made the disaster familiar, and a familiar disaster is one you can actually work. And then there is the other half, the part he had no control over at all. He survived because two other things were true. Because a man he trusted made a hard swim on a thin supply of gas and did not stop. And because a crowd of people on the surface who had every reason to conclude that this was now a body recovery decided to keep going anyway, through a failed borehole through a day of water they could not see through, until the cave finally let them in. Strip out any one of those three, the knowledge, the friend who swam, the people who refused to quit, and this story ends on a flat rock 900 meters underground, and nobody ever hears it. So when you picture those 60 hours, the dark, the cold, the headache that never lets up, the certainty settling in that no one is coming, hold on to what was actually true while he sat there believing it. 60 people were on the surface. His friend had made it out, and the divers who would surface in front of him were already getting into the water. The cave is indifferent. People are not. I want to know what you think you would have held on to, sitting on that rock. 60 hours in the dark, with no way of knowing whether your friend survived the swim, or whether anyone on Earth knows where you are. What gets a person through that? Tell me in the comments, because I genuinely think the answer says a lot about who we are. If this story got to you, hit like so more people find it, and subscribe before you go, because the next one is about a caver who slid headfirst into a vertical crack hundreds of feet underground, and hung there upside down for 27 hours.